Good morning. It is Monday, July the 22nd, and this is The Drill. And thank you very much. My name is Ronald T. Hardgrove, and my podcast is about demonstrating how to beat the left each and every day, to win all the time with the left. My podcast is made possible by Spreaker.com. It can be heard on iTunes, Spotify, Google, and YouTube. My email address is storytimes@hotmail.com. I'm on Twitter at Ronald Hardgrove and on Facebook at The Drill. So I started my socio-political odyssey as a conservative Republican, and I considered myself conservative because the left said I was. The left said that where a person stands on the issues is where they stand politically. And I went along with that. It didn't occur to me to question it. Everybody else seemed to go along with it at the time, so did I. But I found that there was a problem, that every time I was engaged in a debate or an argument with somebody on the left, I couldn't win. And that's when I realized that something is rotten in Denmark. If I know that I'm right, but I can't win the argument, something is wrong. So I figured out soon enough that the issues were really a fallacy. They were a trap set by the left to control the political discourse and control political debate and to win all the arguments. So is there any way for a conservative to win? And the answer is yes. But in order to do that, you have to redefine what it means to be a conservative. So, and I've redefined it to be that be reality-based, that you make the presumption for the status quo, and when you start from that standpoint of making the presumption for the status quo, not only do you win all the time, you can't lose. So, and the only way that the right is going to win the battle with socialism is from the ground up. Each conservative has to win the arguments with socialists in his or her life, at the soccer field, the grocery store, at work, or even at church. It's not going to happen if you're looking for the politicians to defeat socialism. Forget it. If you're looking for the pundits, Rush Limbaughs of the world to do it, forget it. It's going to be you and I defeating the socialist left-wing ground troops. And once they are defeated, you won't see any more Representative Cortezes being elected. So what I'm going to be covering today is there's an article that was written on MSNBC. Actually, it's a clip, or not a clip, but a transcript of an MSNBC show with a guy named Chris Hayes. Judges should be reality-based, the slogans of the day, and also an article in the Washington Times that's called Greenpeace says that plastic Trump straws suck and blasts sale as shocking. And I think it's going to be a great article. So that's when I come back. Thank you very much. Welcome back. And Chris Hayes is apparently a contributor to MSNBC. And there it is. And so anyways, and I heard this little clip from the Hugh Hewitt show this morning. He was talking about, the host was going on and on about Mr. Hayes and refuting him. Because the title of this clip is MSNBC host says, Trump supporters' rage must be destroyed. It cannot be negotiated with. MSNBC host Chris Hayes has some strong words in describing how progressives should approach the kind of sentiments President Trump's supporters expressed during his North Carolina rally on Wednesday. His supporters who chanted, "Send her back," at the mention of Rep. Ilan Omar, a Democrat from Minnesota, reveled in their own Americanness and primacy at the expense of others, Hayes said on Thursday. All-In host Hayes accused Trump supporters of exhibiting a type of passion and rage that fueled Republican politics. Quote, that sentiment at the core of the coalition cannot be pried loose, and it cannot be negotiated with, and it cannot be appeased, unquote, Hayes said. Quote, it must be peacefully, nonviolently, politically destroyed with love, compassion, and determination, but utterly confronted and destroyed, unquote, he added. Quote, that is the only way to break the coalition apart, unquote. Hayes went on to suggest that Trump's coalition was in too deep and shamed themselves too much to leave based on various interests. The heart of the thing must be ripped out, he said. The darkness must be banished. The people who feel moral revulsion at that display we saw last night must collectively mobilize in greater numbers than the chanters. His comments came amid growing controversy surrounding the chant at Trump's rally. Trump has distanced himself from the chant, but also claimed the media blew the issue out of proportion. Quote, it's amazing how the fake news media became crazed over the chant "Send her back" by a packed arena, a record crowd in the great state of North Carolina, but is totally calm and accepting of the most vile and disgusting statements made by the three radical left congresswomen, he tweeted on Friday. Mainstream media has lost all credibility, which has lost all credibility. It's either officially or unofficially become a part of the radical left Democrat Party. It's a sick partnership, so pathetic to watch. So, again, this is another article in which it was Schlichter, he was subbing for Hugh Hewitt this morning, and he was then ripping Mr. Hayes. Well, no, Mr. Hayes, this. And what's, again, fascinating is that he's debating somebody that's not even in the room. He's debating somebody that's not even on the phone. He's debating with somebody that can't even hear him. Okay, so Rush Limbaugh does this all the time. He debates people that are not around. There's nobody there to debate. So, which is silly, and he shouldn't be doing that. But also what the host, Mr. Schlichter, demonstrated is that he can't read. Because if you read this article, you'll figure out that real quick that the Mr. Hayes, the MSNBC host, really ended up saying nothing. He said, let's see, their passion and rage fueled Republican politics. What does that mean? No answer. That sentiment at the core of the coalition cannot be pried loose. It cannot be negotiated with, and it cannot be appeased, Hayes said. What does that mean? Why would anybody want to pry it loose, negotiate with it, or appease it? Why? I don't understand. Okay. It must be peacefully, nonviolently, politically destroyed with love, compassion, and determination, but utterly confronted and destroyed. That is the only way to break the coalition apart. So the purpose of destroying it is to break apart the coalition. What coalition? Coalition between what groups? No answer. And so is there any other reason to destroy this? Did the group say or do something wrong? And that's what he's really avoiding here. Hayes is. He's avoiding coming out and saying what he should be saying, which is that the audience, when they were chanting "Send her back," was either right or they were wrong to do so. They might be wrong morally or ethically. They might be wrong legally. They might be wrong factually, grammatically, whatever. But he should be making a value statement here. It's not surprising. I assume Mr. Hayes is on the left, and so it's not surprising that somebody on the left refuses to make value judgments. I suggested Trump's coalition was in too deep and shamed themselves too much to leave based on various interests. I don't know what that means either. The heart of the thing must be ripped out. The darkness must be banished. People who feel moral revulsion at the display we saw last night must collectively mobilize greater numbers than the chanters. Okay, so why? Why would they do that? that feel moral revulsion. That's the closest he comes to saying that the Trump supporters were wrong. But he should explain, why would they feel revulsed? Who felt revulsion at what they heard, and why? Was it because somebody did or said something wrong? He doesn't make those kinds of value judgments, and he avoids them deliberately. He avoids making value judgments deliberately. Because ultimately, for the left, value judgments are the death knell of socialism. Socialism cannot stand up to scrutiny, cannot stand up to judgment. And so the way to get past that is simply refusing to judge and encouraging or forcing people to do the same thing. So let's see. But basically, again, it's the whole article. Though everything that Mr. Hayes said was of no intellectual value whatsoever. There was a lot of trigger words in there that were designed to, and apparently they worked. Trump supporters' rage must be destroyed, cannot be negotiated with. It has to be pried out, peacefully, nonviolently, politically destroyed, but utterly confronted and destroyed. It's the only way to break the coalition apart. And he slips in these little nonviolently, politically, peacefully, to I guess take the edge off of destroyed, pried apart. But he doesn't define his terms, and his whole article, or his whole statement, Mr. Hayes' statement, is arbitrary. Okay, so what I'm doing is correct. What any right-wing pundit should be doing, and that is analyze it, but don't debate the guy. There's nothing to debate here. It's an arbitrary statement, and other than to note that it's arbitrary and why it's arbitrary, it needs to be ignored. So when I come back, judges should be reality-based. Thank you very much. Welcome back. So judges, when they're whenever somebody is nominating, I should say, a person to become a judge, whether it's a Supreme Court justice or otherwise, they should be picking these individuals based on their merits, not on their politics. The left wants everybody to believe that there is no such thing as making a ruling that is unbiased. That there really is no such thing as government neutrality, especially when it comes to the judiciary. So they create this fiction of activist judges versus judges that are constructionist, I believe is the term that the left uses. Or sometimes more crudely, they'll just say left-wing judges versus right-wing judges, or liberals versus conservatives. And too many conservatives pick up on that, and you'll hear these conservative pundits, saying that the President of the United States needs to nominate conservative justices. And that's not what they need to do. We must have neutral government, not conservative, not liberal, and we have to speak that way. We have to communicate that way. We need to communicate that we want judges that are well qualified, that if there's something in their background or their writings that indicates that they lean in a particular direction, they're going to rule based not on the Constitution, but on their politics, then they should not be getting the nomination, or they shouldn't be confirmed. So we must have neutral government if we're going to have any confidence in the government that we have. That's one of the things that conservatives, true conservatives, are looking to conserve neutral government. And that's, again, why you've got to take the labels out of the judiciary nominating and confirmation process. It's difficult to do because the left is going to continue to label, and there's going to be the left in the news departments as well that's going to continue to do that. But the Republicans and conservatives need to resist the temptation to be part of that and also start labeling people. So when I come back, we've got the slogans of the day. Thank you very much. And the slogans of the day. One of the ways that the left likes to infiltrate our culture is with slogans. And it's a shrewd move. You don't want to have to go out and explain to people your motives and your desires and whatnot by standing and explaining for 20 minutes, standing on a street corner maybe, and have to do a 20-minute explanation about what's going on, if you can sum it up in a short sentence or a couple of words. And so that's what the left does. Primarily, you're going to see the left-wing slogans on bumper stickers. So that's usually where you pick them up, see them, and then they're bandied about in conversations. And a lot of people that are conservative don't think anything of spreading the disease, so to speak, by using these slogans in their everyday life, instead of stopping and thinking about what these slogans mean or providing any type of counter slogan for them, which is what I'm here for, provide some counter slogans. Two of the slogans I saw over the weekend is mean people suck. Right? Mean people suck. The counter slogan to that is yes, they do. Second one is resist hatred. And the counter slogan to that one is resist leadership. You got to remember that the left is always leadership oriented. The conservatives, true conservatives, are representation oriented. We have respect for the individual, and we can look to conserve the basic American political process, which is about representation, not about leadership. And so when you have statements like resist hatred or coexist and things of that nature, those are leadership statements. Those are individuals that are attempting to lead or be leaders and be change agents and get in your psyche. And you need to resist that as much as possible. Don't allow them to get into your psyche, because if they do, you think like a lefty, you'll act like a lefty. If you act like a lefty, you'll vote like a lefty. And the thing is that we could put an end to socialism in this country overnight if every single conservative in this country would get their act together. They would get their act together, listen, read properly, and listen. We could defeat socialism overnight. So, again, resist hatred, resist leadership. All the left thinks that they are leaders and change agents. And if you get that with somebody, you're dealing with a lefty and you don't know what else to say to them, so you can simply tell them, you know what, you're not a leader, you're not a change agent. Have a nice day. Because that's ultimately what they're doing. They think they're being a leader, they think they're being a change agent, they think they're making a difference. And as an aside, it reminds me of change the world. And that's one of the things that the left wants, a revolution. So how do you get a revolution other than simply picking up a gun and running out into the street and start shooting people? One of the ways to do that is to get into people's psyche and convince them that they are revolutionaries. And if you can get them to think like revolutionaries, they'll act like revolutionaries, and they will start a revolution. That's the theory. So one of the ways to do that is to constantly encourage people to be revolutionary. that change should always be revolutionary, or it should be reform, not change on the margins, not updates, not smoothing off the rough edges, but throwing the thing away and starting over again. That's what they're talking about. One of the slogans that you hear also is change the world. And on television, apartments.com. And it's a nice commercial. I like the way that it's done, but it's not lost on me the underlying psychological message here is be a revolutionary. Okay, but apartments.com says change your apartment, change the world. And everything in your life becomes a political statement. Now, finding an apartment to live in becomes not a personal statement, but a political one. And that must be resisted as well. And you resist that by remembering that most of life, is personal and not political. But always note, go into media, mainstream media, with a critical eye. Listen, and what do you hear? Do you hear this kind of a message? And this change the world message, I hear it all the time on television and on radio. Change the world, change the world. Be a revolutionary, be a revolutionary. Never give up, never give up. And so you want to be on the lookout for that kind of thing and be able to, that way they're not going to get in your psyche. If you know what's going on, you can keep them out of your psyche. The only way they can get into your head is if you don't realize it. And then they can sort of get in the back door type of thing. It's like a magic act. Magic act is very full of wonder and fools you when you don't know what's going on. And to the greater degree that the magician can convince you that he's not a magician, he just happens to be there when the magic happens, the better the effect, the more you're going to be wowed by it. Okay, and the same thing the left is trying to do. The left calls it transparency. So, by simply looking for and becoming aware of the little magic tricks that the left likes to pull, you can very easily defend yourself against them. So, who are the true conservatives? Well, let's find out. They are the people that understand that conservatism is not just political, but cultural as well. And they also understand that culture shapes our politics and not the other way around. They're patriotic people who use common sense. They make judgments instead of predictions. They speak clearly and definitively and are not afraid to say no. They are open-minded, asking why rather than why not. They are consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of their existence, unafraid to learn or correct their mistakes. In short, they are normal Americans. And that brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.